Friday night. It's Friday, Friday. Come on, Rockfin. It's Friday, Friday. Party over here. Party over there. It's Friday.
Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati.
All right, guys, welcome. It is Friday. We're ready for the weekend. So welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays. And you can catch me here Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And welcome, guys. All right, really quick. I got to tell you, we're doing something a little bit different tonight. We're actually going to get started with 11 demands. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to get into the news story. So let me go ahead and share my thumbnail so you guys understand what's going on tonight. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So tonight, we're discussing Abby Martin and RANIA KHALEK warning. Very interesting interview. Someone actually sent that to me, so thank you to who did that. But it's a message that all of us need to hear, and that's actually going to lead into the call-in segment tonight. We need to be paying attention to what's going on there. I am also going to discuss AOC versus Trump for 2024. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that conversation is happening. Make sure you go ahead and take that poll that I have pinned to the live chat. Do you think that she would beat Trump? And we'll reveal the results as we end that segment. And we're also going to discuss 11 demands. So Eric and his son Corey is here. And Eric actually has talked about this a little bit before, but he has created a list of demands. And I think this is something that we should be paying attention to when we're talking about who we are going to support, whether they're third party or not. We need to know, what are our demands? What are we asking of them? So I think that is very important here. So we are going to go ahead and actually get started with that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Eric on here.
Hello.
Hello.
Now, I was noticing on that thumbnail, did you see who you put me right next to?
Corey.
Well, who's on the other side of me?
Oh, Trump.
Trump.
Oh, boy.
I guess there was a wall between us.
Yeah, there's a wall there. There's a little border.
But there's, Corey's working on, I think I'm getting his system working here or something, so hopefully he'll jump in a little while as well.
Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and Eric, can you explain to people, why did you come up with this idea to begin with?
Yeah, so one of the things I've been finding is that people, and even the people I really like on the left, they'll talk about the problems and everything that's wrong and what's going wrong, and there's no shortage of those things. The word I like to use sometimes, it's ridiculous how how things are. There's actually the first episode of the show that Corey and I do is called Ridiculous, just pointing out some of these things, and all that stuff is necessary and crucial and needed, but I tend to then ask, like, what's the step two? how are we going to get the systemic changes we need? Because that's another part of kind of my thesis, if you will, is that Happy Friday, is that we really need to change the system in a big way. You know, we can't just say we're not going to vote. I mean, I don't know about you, but if the government falls and Big Pharma stops producing the things that it produces, I'm kind of in trouble. You know, I feel like we need real big systemic change. So the 11 demands, kind of the first half of it, the 1 through 7, are about the kind of the standard policy demands, but trying to take them to the next level. And then there he is. Hey, Corey. Does he have audio? Hey, there he is.
Yes.
And then the back half of it, kind of the 8 through 10 demands, are about what are the systemic things we need to really make this happen, and it really focuses on the money and things like election reform and things like that. And I also, I think there needs to be a set of demands at the core of our movement if we're going to have a movement, of this kind of lefty movement. It doesn't have to be my demands, or it can be something we collaborate on or something, but I feel like we need something like that.
Right. No, I think this is a good idea. I do want to take this time to introduce Corey. Corey, welcome.
Hi, Sabrina. Thank you.
All right. So let's go ahead and share this, Eric, so people can see, and I'll let you, guide this.
Sure.
In reference to the
All
technical
right,
aspect.
Yeah. And so we've got 11 demands for real democracy. The kind of like right now we have a democracy of dollars, and so there's the idea of how can we turn this into a real democracy that's one person, one vote. At the moment, it's kind of 11 of them. So I kind of play around with the idea of the demands going to 11. Let me find my mouse cursor out here. And I don't know about you guys, but 11 kind of makes me think of this.
You can see the numbers all go to 11.
Why don't you just make 10 and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
11. These, you can't just have 10. So anyways, but a little fun with that one. And that was a little clip from our show where we kind of cover these and get into some depth. And we don't have to go into, that level of depth here. But all right, 11 demands. So first one is about healthcare. There's also this concept of not just asking for Medicare for all. Our ask should be more than that. Our ask should be a real national healthcare system, like what other countries have, but even better. I think as a country, as a people, if we set our minds to it, we can make a healthcare system. Sorry, I need a bit of water. A healthcare system that's really better than any other countries, and not just settle for saying let's just expand Medicare for all.
Right. So implement a United States national healthcare system. And so is this more along the lines of what the UK has?
Yeah, that'd be a good model for it. Yeah. The National Healthcare System (NHS) is the system that the United Kingdom uses, which would be, even though the UK is similar to us, falling victim to privatization schemes, and their national healthcare system is being rolled back as well too. But it is a good example for what we should be pushing for, rather than just a Medicare for all arrangement.
And in the UK, they love it. I mean, you can't run as a candidate in the UK and be against the national healthcare system. I mean, that's just a core part of what they're doing.
That's right.
All right. Number 2, climate emergency. Obviously, we're in a major climate emergency. There's the concept of passing a non-corporate Green New Deal program. And so, because that gets into that idea of we can't let the Green New Deal become this thing that just is, now we got, Exxon and Mobil, running the green technology.
Right.
It needs to be something nationalized, something that, the 99% are running. And I think the ones in there are pretty straightforward. Criminal justice reform. I actually just fleshed this one out a little bit more last night. The RBN and you have talked about 10 demands for justice before. I think that's a set of, and so this is somewhat modeled off of that in terms of concept of having the set of demands to be working off of. And, I highly recommend anyone definitely check those out on that page, and the link is here. As far as some specific ones, hi Lex, is focus on and address the root cause of crime, poverty, and I know you'll agree with that one, Sabby, because I'm basically lifting it from what you say.
Yep.
Cut police budgets and reallocate. It's basically, that's defund, whether you use the words or not. Now, the next one here, demand that unjustified shootings of unarmed individuals result in the firing of the police department officials in the chain of command up to and including the police chief or commissioner, and demand the resignation of the mayor. And what I have in mind with this is if we're going to be in the streets, which we should be, which we need to be, and that's part of this whole thing too, is this is going to need that to buttress all of this. But if we're going to be in the streets, I feel like we should get in the street, and there's been a killing like this, I feel like we should get in the streets and stay in the streets until these people in the chain of command are gone. And just make that a demand of the protest.
That's actually what should have happened with the George Floyd protests. I mean, granted, that incident was a little bit more of an outlier because Derek Chauvin actually was held accountable. But again, look what it took for it to get there. It took like thousands of people in the streets, and not just in the United States, but globally.
Yeah, definitely. It's a systemic thing too, because Derek Chauvin was the scapegoat and he committed that crime, and I'm glad that he saw justice personally. But of course, that kind of pervasive civil rights issues, racism, that's among the whole law enforcement and criminal justice kind of population. So unfortunately, what I kind of thought happened with that is when you had the conviction on Derek Chauvin, I feel like people kind of thought it was over, and some of the momentum was lost, and so that was an unfortunate thing.
And of course, it was co-opted by Democrats and that whole and the system. I mean, it felt like during those protests, the number one demand was that the cops around there take a knee, and it felt like the cops said, "Okay, here's a knee," and then everybody went home or something. But
well, the demand was to defund the police. That was the demand, but people let Democrats get a hold of it, like you said. And it went from defund the police to let's get rid of Donald Trump. So when Trump lost, everybody went home, or most people went home. And that's the problem. This is why we can't have politicians co-opt these movements that are on the ground that are done outside of electoral politics. You just can't have it.
Yeah, they went back to brunch. And of course, and then Biden, well, what did he do? Of course, in perfect Biden Democrat fashion, he gave the cops more money.
Right.
I guess it's nice that they make it obvious.
Well, yeah. I mean, especially after January 6th, they essentially turned the Capitol Police into another, federal investigative service. That's something that you saw, which is unfortunate, even when you saw members of the squad and whatnot supporting the Capitol Police expansion bill. And so with criminal justice reform, crime is kind of my specialty. I have my degree in criminal justice. I've worked in different fields of the criminal justice world, but it's this funny socioeconomic thing where crime, like all money and whatnot, is arbitrary, is what we decide to criminalize, and so what you have there is your goal for class solidarity. What we really would like to see with the demands is have this be something that we can get behind in class solidarity and use to do direct actions with, and so really with crime, what we need to see is that for the majority, it's going against poverty. It's a war on poverty, not a war on anything else.
That's right.
And yeah, I mean, they ended up like turning the Capitol Police into like another CIA, FBI agency, it seems like. And And I know Corey has talked about how like the NYPD is like this sprawling worldwide agency now. It's crazy.
Yeah, the NYPD has in terms of manpower about the same, maybe like 10 or 20 people less than the Canadian Armed Forces, the entire Canadian military. They're also, as far as I know, the only municipal law enforcement agency in the United States that has offices internationally. I know that the NYPD maintains an office in Tel Aviv, Israel, and some other places.
All right, then you got end the drug war, which should be a no-brainer for anyone on the left, but who knows for some of these things these days. And the 10 demands. All right, moving on. Implement a minimum standard of living. And again, on this concept of trying to take what has tended to be the demands and take them up to that next step, maybe up to that 11, if you will. The standard demand is, fight for 15 and have a higher minimum wage. And of course, we need that, but I mean, that's like the compromise, and what we really need to be demanding and getting to is the idea of a minimum standard of living for the 99%, for everyone. And so, of course, part of that is, to increase the minimum wage. One concept I thought of is you could look at increasing them in step with how much the wages of the top 1% have increased, because those sure have gone up. There's good homes for everyone, housing first type programs, which are crucial. We should be demanding, basically free access to food and water, just free and open food pantries. Good job to everyone in a living wage. That's kind of your federal jobs program type of concept. We should be changing Social Security into a direct funding model that almost makes it into more of a UBI type of program, rather than right now where it's this nonsense of where like it's taken out of your payroll every year, and the amount you're entitled to depends on how much you paid in, and that's not a Social Security program. I mean, that's a savings fund. I mean, it needs to be, just a plain, program that simply provides for people in their retirements. I wanted to get something in there on reparations, of course. It's one of those things where reparations is an easy word to put out there and say that you support, and of course, we all should. It's one of those things that's going to need to be looked at, and in the 10 demands for justice, they talk about. I think there's a couple of bills that are in Congress to study it and come up with a system of how to deal with that. But the basic concept is dealing with them as what they are, a debt owed. And that's another one of those things that I've heard, and learned and picked up on that framing, from what I hear on RBN.
Yeah, it's a debt that's owed, and the bill that Eric is referring to has been sitting there for, I believe, over 30 years. It's not a new bill, so yeah.
So not just say, we're for this candidate is for reparations, you're for reparations, you need to make that real.
Right.
And then I know these other two are close to Sabby's heart, paid parental leave mandated and student debt. Those are big ones.
I can take number 5, Eric, if you want.
Sure. And then the whole so the whole idea with number 4 is not just to be demanding one thing like minimum wage, or one thing like the housing bid or whatnot, but to try to find this set of demands that would actually lift the standard of living of even the poorest among us.
That's right. I just want to add something really quick where it says increase the minimum wage in a step with how much the wages are and provide good homes for all. We could also refer back to that report that just came out from the Housing Coalition, where they show you how much you should make or you need to make to live in the state that you live in just to be able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment. That's good data to point to, because that report is done every year. So it usually comes out at the end of June, I believe. So for politicians who may argue against that, we can always point to that data to let them know that people are not making the minimum that they should make to live in those states to even afford a 1-bedroom apartment.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
I live in
Number
Boston, so I'm
5.
certainly
There you go.
very sensitive to rent because Boston's quite an expensive city. 5.
And you've sure seen the gentrification around you too. I mean, it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah, a lot of luxury condos going up, and not a lot of social services in Boston, which is unfortunate. So number 5 is is also close to me because if you're a scholar of history, I think of our country right now as being in the late stages of Rome. And what happened in Rome was you had a working class people that were continuously overlooked by the government, and you had an overextended military empire that eventually crumbled, which sounds pretty familiar, honestly. And so even if you're somebody that believes like, oh, hey, we need to maintain the strong military and whatnot, we can be cutting it by at least 20 every year, maybe even more, and we will still remain in terms of military power right up there. The U.S. military or rather the U.S. is basically turned into an arms dealer. I mean, and this is like nothing new. You can even go back to like Iran-Contra in the 80s, where you're selling missiles to Iran, and then drugs coming back into the U.S. That's basically a drug triangle that we created there. Really, nothing can come from it.
Sorry, remember when arms dealers used to be thought of as the bad guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to put that one in.
Same thing for replacing military jobs with federal/green jobs. Another big thing is the military is very predatory against people of color, particularly poverty-stricken people. Essentially, because we don't have a robust education system, especially when it comes to post-secondary education, you end up with a lot of kids that their only kind of hope or shot at a college education might be serving in the military. All respect to people that have served. Especially being an enlisted person in the military is not glamorous at all. You're paid very little. You are very controlled. And so we could change that into this federal jobs program, going to green jobs that are going to be treated better. It's not really a new thing either, too, because you go back to the 1950s, you had Dwight Eisenhower warn of this military-industrial complex. And that was a long time ago, and you're also talking about a person that was a 5-star general in World War II, and he was out there warning about this, and still it's something that continues to go down. Same with the Patriot Act, Espionage Act, essentially all of these laws that allow the military and the military-industrial complex and the intelligence community, which is another big one, to spy on Americans. And then with intelligence agencies conducting propaganda and psyops, essentially this gets into the government transparency issue. The intelligence community is not a friend of the American people.
That's right.
Yeah, and when I was putting on that last one, I started out, I didn't really have a way to really put it in here succinctly, but one of the things they do now is, rather than gather the data themselves, they buy it off of private data brokers. They'll buy things like cell phone location data right from the cell companies, and that's become a big workaround these days to those things. All right, number 6, another big one. All these are like big issues. Is censorship. Because of course they're going to be they're coming for us all, as far as anyone who's making trouble and not going along with the old status quo. They're going to come after. So there's freedom of speech from censorship, whether from government or corporations. And of course, that's another thing where they use the back door of censoring through YouTube, Twitter, all the usual suspects. And then when you complain about it, they say, well, it's not a First Amendment issue because it's not the government doing it. But of course, the government is just doing it by proxy.
That's right.
And the prosecutions of whistleblowers and journalists and Free Assange and all the others, it should be a no-brainer among this crowd. Break up and nationalize large social media corporations. And then when you break them up, you can go the next step of reorganizing them as employee-owned, co-ops. If Roger Meadows is listening, that's going to perk up his ears. Do because that can be a problem when you're talking about nationalizing these industries. Sometimes, people can get nervous, rightly so, with the idea of well, is that more government power? And is the government going to run it well, or just use it as another tool? And so I feel like one way you can perhaps work around that and ameliorate for that is to have it be employee owned and controlled and run on a democratic basis. And there are different ways you could bring in that kind of democracy. It's definitely an underlying theme in all this is the idea of getting real democracy in play. Apply common carrier style rules, similar to those for communications company. That's kind of a similar thing of dealing with the YouTube type censorship and whatnot. Disallow deletions and deplatformings except via due process. Regulate all the algorithms. That's another big one that can kind of fly under the radar. Yep. Those algorithms are huge. They're completely black box, opaque. If you take over these companies in one way or another, one of the big things you do is you want to crack open those algorithms, and you really want to change the purpose of the whole thing, because there's right now it's all about just generating engagement, generating clicks. They want you to be more and more onto the site, and if that means pushing more and more extreme content to you, they'll do that, because that's where the dollars are. And then prohibit all non-consensual collection of personal data by government agencies except through proper search warrants. And that kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier, that they one way they get around all this is by purchasing the data, and then they act like, oh, we didn't do a government collection.
Yeah.
That's right. And if you guys pay close attention, sometimes you'll notice this, like on your smartphones. Certain apps will give you that notification, permission to collect your data. You can say no to that on some of those apps, but regardless, if you're using a smartphone, your data is still being collected regardless.
And I don't know if there's really, I don't really see just like turning off the data and turning off the tracking and all that as really the answer. It's because there's just too much going on there. I feel like you really need to attack it from the other side and get control of these huge companies and the way the government interacts with them.
Right. The reality is, if you have a smartphone, your data is being tracked in some way, shape, or form. If you have a smartphone,
the genie's long since out of that bottle.
Yeah.
I'll take immigration reform.
Go.
So first of all, obviously, this is an immigrant nation. If you're not Native American, then you immigrated to this country in some way. For different peoples, that varies greatly. But the power of the United States is that it's diverse, and you have a group of different people, a group of different ideas. I truly do believe in the American melting pot. What you have with the immigration situation right now is just straight up xenophobia. So first one is abolish ICE. ICE stands for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It is a law enforcement agency under the Department of Homeland Security. They are mainly dealing with what they would consider to be smuggling or people entering the country illegally. I want to talk about what happened with the drug war in the 80s. The real big panic was crack, and there was a lot of hysteria over it. The whole try it once, your life is all this. There was the hysteria over crack babies, which is completely scientifically inaccurate and had a lot of racial undertones into it. And I want to draw a comparison to how we deal with immigration reform, because a lot of people that lived through that period, the 80s and the 90s, and especially the people that either had family members do time incarceration or did incarceration for their own situations, are really upset at seeing how we deal with heroin and opioids today. How do we deal with heroin and opioids today? We look at it as a health problem primarily. Even the police these days, they got their Narcan. They're trying to do into treatment, and I'm not saying that is a bad thing, but it is worth stating that opioids, by and large, are seen in white neighborhoods, in rural areas, and that was opposite of the crack epidemic. And so the comparison I'd like to make to immigration is how we treat somebody coming in from Mexico versus maybe like a Ukrainian. Obviously, right now, it's big right now. Everybody's with Ukraine. Everybody wants to open their doors for Ukrainians because Ukrainians are white, they're Europeans. And so we have that kind of sense at it, and we look at it differently.
It's basic racism.
As opposed to black and brown people coming from down south. And so essentially, as an immigration policy, what we would advocate for is what's called an open door policy. Also, that was generally speaking the policy of the United States prior to World War II, just in general, just open door policy.
Right. And I just want to add something here in reference to that as well. In reference to like the drugs going into, when you're comparing like the 80s and you're comparing it like the opioid epidemic, what people, I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but you have to know that drugs that were put into black neighborhoods, particularly black neighborhoods in the 80s, they were put there on purpose.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. Like it's, so yeah, you were pretty much demonized if you were a part of that group. And there was no sympathy. The response was lock them up and put them in jail. Whereas with the opioid epidemic, there is sympathy, and the response is, how can we help them? So that should have been the same across the board.
Definitely.
And so this number 7 immigration reform is perhaps a little thin at the moment. It could be expanded. We'll see. One of the things, like I'm saying with all this, is I'm not looking to present these like the best and final answer, like Moses coming down with the plaques off the hill, but as a collaboration. All right, so the first 7 really are the policy ones, and if you're reading through this, you probably will and should hit this point and say, well, that's a nice list, but how are you going to get anywhere? How is this even going to come close to happening? And so the back 4 of these are an attempt to tackle that one in a big systemic way. And as always, as we like to say, focus on the money, follow the money, and things become clear. And we're going to have to address the influence of big money in politics and government, and this is the issue that drives all the other issues, really. At the state and local level, you can be enacting ballot measures for clean elections and public financing of campaigns, and there's that is really very doable. It has been done in different ways at the state level. Massachusetts had a clean elections law at one point. There's a whole story about what happened to that, but it's very possible to just have these systems. You can do like democracy dollar type systems at the state level, even where you get vouchers that you give to the candidates. And then at the federal level, you're going to have to enact some kind of constitutional amendment, is my view, because any big campaign finance reform you come up with right now, and that you get anywhere with, it's going to get to the Supreme Court, and they're going to say, money is speech, corporations are people, so that's unconstitutional. So there's the We Amendment, there's the We the People Amendment, which what's cool is like you can bring this up like this and look at it very quickly because it's short. I mean, this is the whole thing. It's basically corporations do not have constitutional rights. A little bit fleshing that out. Money is not speech. Some verbiage fleshing that out. And that's like it. The last part is, it's not going to be used to do freedom of the press. So a very straightforward amendment that I think if we made it a demand and made noise about it and get in the streets about it, we'd get somewhere with the Move to Amend organization is out there, and they're working on it, and there's the whole ideas around what's the path to that, and you need things like constitutional convention and whatnot. So it's not an easy fight. It's not an easy path. If someone has an easier path to getting where we want to be, I'm all ears. it's kind of part of where this can end up is that it can come down to like what's the least difficult option to do these things. We got corruption, investigate, prosecute corruption. You're gonna have to ban revolving door politics because, of course, that can just be another way to do payoffs and whatnot.
Yep.
And demand radical transparency. Transparency is huge.
Yeah, for all representatives and agencies. That's right.
So then another one another pushback I'll hear a lot is, what's the point in voting if the elections are rigged? And I mean, I don't deny there's definitely, rigging in various forms and in various ways, in the elections. And so we're going to need to demand, elections that we can count on, that we can believe in. I don't know how much we want to get into this one, but one answer that's put out there a lot of times is to go to paper ballots. And I'm frankly dubious about that option. It's going to be difficult to scale when you're getting into millions of votes. You're going to end up in a computer sooner or later. Even if you do the whole system on paper, it's going to go into a counting system. And if that counting system is compromised, then your election is potentially rigged and compromised. If you want to have, another part of this is, do ranked choice and star voting systems, you're going to need computers to do those. You're not going to get a workable ranked choice voting system with paper ballots. It's just too complicated. And so if we're given that we're going to have computer systems in this, then what you need is you need to demand and make it into law that all the voting machines are open source, they're audible, and everything's transparent. And when these systems are open source, that means that a guy like me, who happens to be a software engineer, could go in and look at the code and look for, is there a problem in there? Is there a backdoor? Is there an issue? If you're wondering, is the code really running on the election system? Well, if you have a demand in systems and in laws that these have to be auditable by the public, then people could go in and look around the system and audit it and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, Big Mad Crab said, what about open source voting software? Yeah, that's what we have up here. Make all voting machines and software open source and audible by the public.
And so it needs to be part of what the what do you call it? The elections people, the election, what do you call that? Who runs the elections? Like the Secretary of State in their office. It has to be part of what they're doing. And they need to be directly answerable to the public, and you need real, radical transparency on these things.
Right, and it would need to be the same in every state. Like, you can't have it
some standards
one way for some states and not like for others. I would also add to this to make Election Day a national holiday for everyone.
That's a
so
good
that
one.
way everyone can actually.
All right.
They don't have to take off from work. Some companies, some employers will not let you have it off to go and work anyway. So that's a big one I think that could change. And I think we could look at what Colombia does with their system. Because in Colombia, when Pasta came on to talk about this, he said that's the difference. Like, they have paper ballots that are hand counted in front of the public. Everybody has election day off. So they have more transparency. They can see the votes being counted, and everybody can actually go out and vote that day. And we don't have that here in this country. So that's a big part.
Yeah, it should be like a big party, all get together and vote and look at what's happening and have access to it. Definitely. And see, we're collaborating in real time here, because I made a note of that, that Election Day holiday. Yep, that should go on here. I also have on here star voting systems, and I won't go into it in detail now, but look up star voting. It's pretty cool. It's like ranked choice, but even better. Open up ballot access, of course, that's huge, and that needs to be a thing that you just need to have, real straightforward rules for what people need to get on the ballot. The other one of the big ones out there in the presidential elections is the Electoral College, and this is one of those things like there's this system called National Popular Vote, and the idea is that if it would be an interstate compact, and if you pass that in more than half the states, all those states agree, whoever wins the popular vote gets all their electors. And what that does is that turns the system into a popular vote system.
Actual democracy.
Ooh. What's this you speak of? What is this foreign concept you speak of?
Actual democracy. I would also add to this that every candidate that meets the threshold should be able to debate, whether they're a third-party candidate or independent or
not
not.
Just ballot.
That's a good one.
All right. It's another good one. Not just ballot, but debates.
I can take number 10.
And so in National Popular Vote, just to finish, it actually has been passed in, I think it's 10 or 20 states. I'd have to look it up again. All right. Taxation and funding, go.
All right. Yeah. So first one does what it says on the box: abolish all taxes except for highly progressive income taxes, wealth taxes, taxes on large corporation, abolish tax loopholes. So not a lot of people kind of think about it in this terms. We know that a lot of corporations pay zero tax. Zero tax. That means that people experiencing homeless in the U.S. pay more taxes than these corporations, because people often forget about the sales tax, your meals tax. Even if you are unbanked, you are paying taxes pretty much every day. So what you have is these just regressive taxes, like these sales and whatnot taxes that are essentially just hurting the people at the very, very bottom of the totem pole. When in general you have people that are doing the offshore tax havens and everything like that. So essentially all of those sort of minor petty taxes, we're looking to not really be talking about those. Basically have people that have the means to really participate with that, doing that. So
There's
same
no
as
good reason to have them.
Yeah. Same as the tax system as a tool to address wealth inequality. That's a good way to go about it. Just as a little quick anecdote, one thing that I always am bothered by, not only do I think that we should have free state schools for post-secondary education, for bachelor's degrees and whatnot, but I think law schools should be free and open to the public. That should just be a thing that states and federal government establish law schools, because one of the things that I've noticed in the legal profession is, for the most part, it is a certain type of person that has the opportunity to become an attorney. And these are incredibly powerful positions. As a matter of fact, within the criminal justice system, the most powerful person within a criminal justice system is a district attorney, because they can make or break or make or stop anything. So what you have with the tax system as we have right now is it's incredibly complicated. Earlier, Eric was talking about the People Amendment and the beauty of that law being that it is so simple and quick and easy to read. The Constitution is written the same way. That is essentially how laws should be, is that a lay person can read and understand them, that you don't need to have this complicated legal education. If you have a system where the laws are so hard to understand and complicated that you need that, it's like that by design. It's like that so that people that are not in that club cannot understand that.
Yep.
So, yeah, prosecute, potentially expel persons and corporations that abuse offshore tax havens. Historically, we are the police are really, really good at going after the low-hanging fruit, dealing with petty street crimes, including victimless crimes. The white-collar crime is pretty much unenforced. It's just something that we don't even look at. I actually personally dropped out of the police academy, deciding that's not what I wanted to do. If anybody knows of any jobs where I can be prosecuting white-collar crime, please let me know. I would love to do that. But it is absolutely something that we need to be putting more time into. And I'm sure a lot of people here know this, but what it really comes down to is complexity. I know somebody that works as an IRS special agent, and what they explained to me is that one of the reasons that they go after the low-hanging fruit is because of resources. They don't have the resources or time to go after, not even like a Bezos. A Bezos would be an extreme thing, but even just a multimillionaire, it requires a lot of effort, and they have the attorneys to deal with it. And so that's something that really just, it doesn't get done by the IRS because it's too complicated for them, I suppose. But that's, of course, all by design in the system. And funding state and local governments of federal dollars distributed on a per person basis.
So that gets into kind of the MMT theory. And one of the key things to take away from MMT is that the purpose of taxes is not to fund programs. This is a misconception. It's kind of organized that way at the state level, but especially at the national level, it is, that's not what taxes are for. Taxes are to cycle the money back in. And so what happens is, who are you cycling the money back in from? And the current tax system sucks it all up from all of us, from the 99%, and the 0.1%, that very top. The higher up you get, the less the tax burden is for what it should be. And essentially the current tax system is an engine of wealth inequality. And so that needs to be inverted and turn it into an engine against wealth inequality. And we can do that, but the first step is to realizing that that's what's happening now, and that's what we have to do, and that's why I think MMT is really important. All right,
let's go to number 11. I think we got a couple minutes left here before I have to.
All right. Well, this one's pretty quick and basic. Democratize the enterprise. See Professor Wolf, right? About all the worker co-ops and in different ways you can do that. Now, in general, I'd like to. The other thing I'd like to touch on about it is, and this is off, but by the way, all this is on the erictred.com website, which I have on my little nameplate here on here. So in terms of what do you do with all this, like you can say, this is a great list, but how do we get from here to there? And so in this concept, I had to call it something, so I call it radical electoral politics, at least for now. So step one, as we've been doing, construct a list of demands. Check. So then step two is to use this list of demands as a litmus test, as a sorting hat. You're asking every candidate, do you support the list? And so it becomes pretty clear who's on your side and who's not. When you're hearing Andrew Yang, I mean, does he hit anything on this list? Barely. As opposed to someone like John Stasevich, who was on the show a few days ago. When he was talking, I mean, it sounded like he was almost going through my list, checking off the points. So, number three, if they're not on board, then call them out. Call them what they are. They're corrupt. This is what Democrats and Republicans, that's what they both are, corrupt. We want to be providing zero support for both of them until they start enacting the demands. That means no votes, no money, no praise, no little, they did a good thing with this or whatnot, so maybe, they're not on our side. Provide all possible support and aid to third-party and independent candidates who support the demands, and any serious candidate should already be calling out our current representatives what they are, is corrupt. When roadblocks are encountered, when it's not happening, then we want to intensify direct actions and make direct actions a real part of this. In terms of protests, general strikes, sit-ins, boycotts, I think we should be getting in their faces about these things, and be relentless about pointing out the real source. It's the top 0.1% versus the rest of us, and not get caught up in the left versus right and the culture wars and the identity politics. This is the key fight. And the one thing I'll end with, as far as what's in all this stuff, is there's this question of, should we be doing mutual aid or should we be doing electoral politics? And I'm trying to put that out there as a false choice, as a false dichotomy. So rather than framing these things in competition, let's talk about doing both, working together. Neither one of these things alone are going to get us the full-up systemic change we need. If it's just direct action, that's going to be over here. If it's just electoral politics, it's going to need both. And the corporate establishment loves to separate us into these bickering camps and talking down what the other side's doing. I'm proposing let's collaborate on how mutual aid, direct action, and radical electoral politics can be combined, working together and using the list of demands as the thing that connects them, as the plan, as kind of the glue between them.
Well
My big thing, just in a quick way of that, is just try to combat the natural cynicism. I know for me that's a big thing. It's definitely easy to be nihilistic. You just got to keep pushing up, keep getting up and doing stuff. Definitely exercise your civil rights. Don't accept the answers that don't make sense. Challenge authority. And biggest thing is, if you're talking to people that might not be 100% on board with where you are politically, just try to emphasize that it's really a class issue, that it's not about anything other than class solidarity, because anything other than class solidarity is probably just your corporate media and your ruling class having the peasants bicker over silly stuff rather than focusing on the money.
Basically, that's what I keep telling people. Like you can't. So thank you guys so much for explaining that to people, because I really do think this was a good idea that you guys did here, the 11 demands, because it's true. It's like, well, what are we asking people to do other than Medicare for all and cancel student loan debt? Like, we all know that, but what else do we want them to do? What are we asking them to change? And I think you're not just focusing on policies, you're also focusing on the systemic things that need to be a part of these demands as well. And I think that's important.
Thank you, Sabby.
All right, I'm gonna get all Jesse Ventura on you. Okay, Sabby, are you for the demands? Are you supporting me? Come on, Sabby. Come on, Sabby. You know you want. Come on. Hopefully, people saw Jesse Ventura. They know what I'm channeling here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all on board.
Oh, I got a yes.
I mean, I think this is great. This is awesome.
I got further than Jesse did.
Yeah, I'm going to show this to, I think Nick saw this. I'm not sure if the rest of RBN saw it, but I'm going to show it to the rest of them too, because yeah, we need like a list of demands. We can't just say, just defund the police or cancel student loan debt, and then we still go out there and vote for them anyway. That's the problem. That's why nothing ever changes. So I think this is a comprehensive list, and Eric explained to you how to do it. Also mentioning how you can combine mutual aid, direct action, and electoral politics all together. And that's the thing too. And I think this is key. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Sabby.
All right. And check out erictred.com if you want to see more. Also, we have videos up to where Corey and I get into these things and some other things. And I think we'll do some more. What do you think, Corey?
Sure. All right, Sabby. Have a good rest of your night.
What if he says no? All right.
All righty.
See ya.
Bye. All right, guys. Very informative. Make sure you tell people about that, because there needs to be some type of demands. Like, we can't just say, we want you to do this thing. Like, we need to have a set of things and show this to people who are running for office and see what they say. Show it to them. Okay. I want to shout out these super chats really quick. Shout out patrons, and then we're going to get into these two news stories here. So quick shout out to Aberdeen71. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Shout out to Terry Hinton. This is a great topic of discussion. Thank you so much for that super chat. And thank you for this super sticker as well, Aberdeen71. And thank you for this super sticker, Carrie Scott. Jim Cree says Eric T has cool ideas. I agree, Jim. I agree. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you want to become a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and Ultimate. All of their names are listed here. And their names are also scrolling across the bottom of the screen, that little ticker there that you see. Again, huge shout out. Thank you guys so much for your support. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get into our first news story tonight. Now, there is a poll that is pinned to my live chat. If you haven't had a chance, please take that poll. I have a point. I'm going somewhere with that, I promise. And we're actually going to get started with that story because, believe it or not, people are actually pushing for this to happen. People are pushing for AOC to run for 2024. Now, that doesn't mean that AOC came up with this idea herself, but this is what other people want to happen. They believe that if AOC runs against Donald Trump in 2024, that she would win. I'm going to check out that poll result at the end of this story. But let's go ahead and share this from Case Study QB because there's two clips I want to play here for you. One is announcing that people believe that AOC is the best shot when it comes to 2024 if Donald Trump is running. And the other one is in reference to what this would actually mean for the Republican Party. So shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. I kid you not, guys. I'm not making this up. They are actually entertaining this right now. So let's go ahead and play this first clip here.
Strategist says squad leader Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the party's best option.
Oh, hold on. Eric, can we get a volume booster? Sorry, guys. Sometimes these vids sound loud on my end when I listen to it on my phone, but then they don't when I live stream. Also, just a reminder, guys, hit that like button if you haven't had a chance to do so.
Squad leader Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the party's best option in 2024. Strategist says squad leader Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the party's best option in 2024 as fewer and fewer Democrats are willing to back Joe Biden. In an op-ed for The Hill, Michael Starr Hopkins writes, Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters want the party to nominate someone other than President Biden in 2024. They want someone who punches back. Democrats need AOC to meet this historic moment. AOC, who is known for attracting a lot of media attention, is just one of many names floated as a possible alternative to the president for the 2024 election. Recent polling shows nearly 70% of registered voters want someone other than Joe Biden as the Democrat.
This is absolutely horrible. Do you want Biden to run in 2024? 68.6% said no. 21.8% said yes. This is sad. I don't think I've seen these numbers before with another president in my lifetime. This is really, really bad. But now they're entertaining. They think AOC would be that one because, as she mentioned, they want someone who punches back. I would argue that AOC doesn't punch back enough. Let's be real here. AOC is out there voting for NATO. She's voting along with corporate Democrats to give more money to Ukraine. She couldn't stand up when it came time to the Iron Dome bill. AOC, every chance that she's had from what I've seen when it comes to legislation, has cowered. She's either voted present or she has gone along with corporate Democrats. That's not punching back. I'm sorry. She's riding the fence just enough so that she still is progressive to the DSA crowd. But at the same time, the corporate Democrats, she's letting them know, hey, you can trust me. I'm still one of you. You can't do that if you're really trying to punch back. Ask Cynthia McKinney if you can do that. You can't. If she was really punching back, she would be gone. They would have done everything that they could to primary challenge her to get her out of there. She's not really punching back. This is the problem. But this is the narrative that they are telling people. I think it's laughable, in my opinion.
Democratic candidate in 2024. Strategist says squad leader.
So that's that. And notice how they refer to her as squad leader. They refer to AOC as the leader of the squad. Last time I checked, squad really doesn't have a leader because they vote. They don't really vote as a block. Remember what Cori Bush said, they vote for their district. So they don't really come together. Usually they don't. So how is there a leader? I don't know. But mark my words, this is something that AOC absolutely, I believe, at some point is planning to do. She is planning to run at some point. I think that she's trying to follow the same path that Nancy Pelosi has followed. But again, she's not a fighter. She pushes just enough so that she can still be accepted. Uh-oh. Oh no. What happened here? Oh, my plug. Sorry, my plug came out. She pushes just enough so that she can still be accepted on both sides. And that's what I think. I think that this was a plan from the very beginning. I told you the moment I found out that she interned for Ted Kennedy, that let me know right then and there who she really was. The moment I found out that she was not truthful about her background when it came to her being a bartender, that she didn't reveal to people that she had a startup, that right there let me know who she really was. When I found out that she didn't really grow up in the Bronx per se, that she grew up in a suburb outside of New York City, that right there let me know who she was. You have to remember that AOC went to Boston University. I worked at Boston University. I know the zip codes that BU recruits from when it comes to New York and when it comes to the Bronx. Sorry, but you're talking to someone who was a part of admissions. So I know how it works. So this has been a setup from the beginning. I felt like they've been grooming her all along to finally, at some point, run for president. Now, do I think that she's going to run for president in 2024 and try to primary challenge Joe Biden? Not without the permission of Nancy Pelosi. And Nancy Pelosi isn't going to give that permission. I don't think anyone's going to give that permission. Right now, Ro Khanna and all of them are saying we need to back and support President Biden. So I think that that is possibly most likely not going to happen. But if it did happen, would that actually help Republicans? Let's see. Shout out to Case Study QB again for this clip here. Now, here are Republicans talking about what could happen if AOC runs and if this would be actually helping them.
I looked it up, October 13th, 2024, she turns 35. So she'd be there just in time. Of course, she'd be campaigning if she decides to do it while she's 34. So that might be some problems with that. But could we go from the oldest president to the youngest?
Republicans would be so lucky to have her as the nominee. We ought to fervently wish for it. Think about the analogy that that writer talked about. Think about Bill Clinton. By the time we got around to 1992, he'd been the governor of the state of Arkansas for nearly 20 years, or attorney general before that. He'd compiled a record as an education reformer, as somebody who wanted to reform government, reform welfare, change the nature of the Democratic Party from being too far left to putting him back in the center of American politics. He was a serious player. Head of the National Governors Association, head of the Democratic Governors Association. Would somebody please tell me what AOC has done besides come up with the Green New Deal? And what legislative accomplishment has she achieved? Let's go back, in fact, David, to the beginning.
This is something I think we need to talk about, that some people bring it up, but some people don't. He brought up legislation. And this is one of the criticisms that people have had about AOC and other progressive members in Congress. Not really passing any bills. And that's a big one. Now, does that mean people would not vote for her because of that? No, because Roger Meadows even told you so himself. A lot of times people vote for people based on personality. But the problem with AOC running, if she were to run in 2024, it's interesting though, I think. I'll get to that point in a second. If she were to run in 2024 against Donald Trump, do I think that that would actually help Republicans? It could. And I'm going to explain to you why. On the left, when we look at the progressive space per se, AOC is still pretty popular. She's popular amongst the left people. I'm not talking about those of us who left this movement and say, screw it, we're done with the two-party system. When you look at like that DSA crowd, AOC for the most part is pretty popular. Here's the problem. When it comes to that portion of us that have left this movement, those of us that are done with the two-party system, we're most likely not going to vote for AOC. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. And I mentioned this before, they're not counting us. See, they think that everybody that backed Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020 is still backing Bernie Sanders and this movement. And that's not necessarily the case. I know several people that have walked away from this. So if they're counting us in, I could see why some people would say, oh, yeah, she would definitely win. But they're not considering the fact that some of us have walked away from it, that some of us are done with electoral politics altogether. They're not thinking about that. They're still including us. So now that part of the movement has now decreased. So your numbers are smaller than they were when it was including all of us. Add to that the fact that the left, that progressive left in this country, is actually a small group. And this is what I've been telling people before. I think years ago, I thought that we were bigger than we actually are. It wasn't until I started talking to other people about Bernie Sanders and about like these policies, that's when I started to realize, America is really a conservative country. Now, was I able to change some people's minds when it came to the issues like Medicare for all? Absolutely. But did I change their mind enough to the point that it changed the way that they would vote? Not so much, not in my case. Some people here and there, but not significantly. The problem that someone like AOC is going to run into, number one, they're going to use the same type of smear tactics that they used against Bernie Sanders on AOC. They're going to say that she's a socialist. They're going to say that she wants to turn the country into Cuba, Venezuela. They're going to say that she's radical. She wants to take your health care away. The media is going to smear her just as much as they did Bernie Sanders. And that's both sides of the media, by the way. That's going to be the conservative right wing, and that's also going to be the liberal media outlets as well. She's going to have that same issue that Bernie Sanders had. But here's another issue that she's going to have where I think Bernie actually had an advantage. Bernie had a lot more experience. He had been a politician for a long time. A lot of people know him. He was very much involved back in the day in activism. He was very much involved in activism. So there's that. Bernie at that time was pretty good on the issues also when it came to foreign policy. AOC, however, when you listen to her in interviews when talking about foreign policy, she is not good on those issues. And this has been one of the things that people have pointed out about her multiple times, that she's weak on foreign policy. Right now, considering the times that we are going through, you cannot afford to be weak on foreign policy. You can't. You just can't. So that's a big part of the problem. Now, is there a way she could get around the media issue? Well, yeah, she can water down her platform. She can water down the policies. She can change her tune, and maybe all of a sudden she's not saying Medicare for all. Maybe this time around she's saying access to health care, which some people have done. Maybe this time around she's not saying cancel all student loan debt. Maybe this time around she's saying let's cancel just a portion of it. So she could do that. But then that makes me wonder too, what would the DSA crowd feel about AOC if she started watering down the platform? So those are things to think about too. But you got to understand, I think the biggest problem for her is going to be the fact that she doesn't have as much experience. Granted, neither did Donald Trump, but Donald Trump, he ran on upsetting poor and working class people. He got them riled up and he said, we got to drain the swamp. You guys have been exploited. He knew what to run on. AOC, on the other hand, I think that more people are starting to wake up to her game. I think more people are starting to see that it seems like she wants to be more so of a celebrity than she wants to be a politician that is actually going to go in there and fight for the people. And I think more people are starting to call that out. The way that she has voted in reference to the progressive base, that might be a problem. So I don't think she would win, but I do think, yeah, if she ran, she could actually help the right. She really could. Let's get back into this video.
Kenny, do you remember where she came from?
I see a white chart coming. I see a white chart coming.
You got a whiteboard coming, baby. You got a whiteboard coming. So remember, what's the number one rule in politics? If you're in office, don't lose home with the people. Don't lose touch with the people back home.
Right.
Joe Crowley was a high-ranking Democrat who thought he didn't need to worry about his district, hadn't even had an opponent in years, never went home, was too busy being a hot dog in Washington, and then up comes the young 28-year-old left-winger and beats him in a primary in which a grand total of 29,778 people voted. Think about that: 16,898 people in a district in Brooklyn where they low turnout. Incredibly low turnout, launch her on a national career, and now somebody's talking about her being the leader of the Democratic Party. Thin resume, not all that bright.
But Carl, are you suggesting, just to be clear, are you
left-wing.
suggesting that she might lose in November? I mean, are you suggesting enough people come out who are dissatisfied with what she's doing inside the Beltway that they could vote against her?
I would be happy if it would not hurt her chances. I would volunteer to be the chairman of the Austin, Texas fundraising committee for AOC for the Democratic presidential nomination. We will have a serious Democrat as the nominee of the Democratic Party in 2024, not AOC.
Well, like you, I do believe that she's toned.
Yeah, that is something I do want to add as well. I think 2024 would be too soon. Do I think she's going to run at some point? Yes, I do. But I think 2024 would be a little bit too soon. And I hate to say it, but you know what's going to happen, right? If the Democrats lose, they're going to blame someone like her. They're going to blame her the same way they blamed Bernie Sanders when Hillary Clinton lost. And people are going to look at her and say, you gave us Trump or you gave us DeSantis. So I think she's smart enough to know not to primary challenge Joe Biden. I don't think Nancy Pelosi would be for that. I don't think actually most of them in DC would be for that. Even Ro Khanna knows not to primary challenge Joe Biden in 2024. Even he knows better. So I don't think she would run in 2024. I think that's too soon, but I do think she is going to run at some point. So you have to pay attention to the moves that she's been making and the way that she's been moving. Like I said, she rides the fence just enough so that she appears to be kosher on both sides, on the progressive side and on the corporate Dem side. That's what she's doing. She plays it in the middle.
To what most Americans see as their problem. I mean, most Americans don't believe in socialism. They don't believe in defunding the police. They don't believe in critical race theory. She wants to kill fossil fuels even more than Joe Biden does. So these are the issues that Americans now blame for the problems that they're having, and those are the ones that she's on record as being in favor of.
I think what he's trying to say here is that he's assuming that she would run on what people call those culture war issues. I will say if she were to run on those issues, yes, that would be a problem because a lot of people are tired of hearing about it. Again, I think she's smart enough to know not to do that. But at the same time, when you have campaign advisors, sometimes they move you in a direction that they feel is best to help you win, and you lose a little bit of yourself along with that. But yeah, if she does run on those types of issues, yeah, that would really help the right, because not just people on the right are sick of hearing about it, but you got people who are liberals that are sick of hearing about it. And you got people on the left that are sick of hearing about it. So I think that would be a problem for her as well.
But are more people in the Democratic Party believing, as this guy does, that she is the answer, that she could go totally against the grain of what American voters want?
Well, if you wanted to keep going on your list, we could do it, starting with open borders and see decriminalization of prosecutorial
Which, by the way,
decisions.
Latinos are not in favor of the open borders, and she claims the mantle of representing Latinos, which, of course, she doesn't.
The Democratic Party has gotten more liberal, but even today, self-described moderates and traditional liberals and conservatives are a majority of the Democratic Party. The progressive wing, the Democratic Socialist wing of the Democratic Party, is by no means the majority of that party. And look, she is a compelling young figure, certain amount of charisma, but Americans treat their presidency as a serious job. Right. And the ums and the ahs and the sort of vacant looks that she presents in interviews are not going to convey a sense of seriousness, nor is her agenda.
Right.
Look, abolition of private health insurance. I mean, we could go on and on and on.
Right.
She is a wealth of riches for any perspective.
Well, it's not just her.
Republican
The tone deafness of the Democratic Party right now, exemplified, I think, today by the example of that $80 billion that they want to spend in supersizing the IRS against the wishes of the vast majority of Americans think the IRS is doing a bad job. More than 60% right now, according to the Gallup poll, and they want to supersize it 6 times to its present size. I mean, it just seems to me to be crazy. And as a campaign issue, they're going to be killed by it. No.
This is why I say it doesn't matter who runs on the Dem ticket in 2024. People are going to vote based on the economy. And this is a big one. It's been what, 2.5 years now? The economy has been crazy. Like, people have been struggling. Here we are, 2022. People are still having economic issues in this country. This is going to be a big one. It's going to be the economy. That's why I said, like, you can replace Joe Biden with all these different people. But if people are still hurting financially come 2024, and hopefully it's not as bad as it is now, but if people are still struggling financially come 2024, and Joe Biden has not implemented any of these issues that he said he was going to implement, I think regardless of who you put in that spot to run in that space, they're going to lose. I still think the Democrats are going to lose in 2024, and I think the Republicans are going to win. And it's unfortunate. I'd rather see a third party candidate win, because both of these parties are just going back and forth. But the economy is a big one. And I really think the Democrats in DC know that Joe Biden stands a strong chance to lose in 2024. And I think that's why they're entertaining other possibilities to take his place. But I don't think AOC is ready to be president. I don't think she would be ready to be president in 2024. Now, there's something else I want to show you, because I want to show you what you would be getting if AOC were to win. And I'm about to keep it real with you, because if you think there is that much difference between AOC and Nancy Pelosi, based on the way that they vote, it is not. Take a look at this. When you actually compare Nancy Pelosi and AOC in a head-to-head voting comparison, they are really not as different as you would think. Look at this. AOC and Nancy Pelosi are from the same party and agreed on 88% of votes. You see that? They agreed on 88% of votes. So here's the bar. 88% agree, 12% disagree. But they didn't always agree. Out of 82 votes in the 116th Congress, they disagreed on 10 votes, including 3 major votes. Here are the votes they disagreed on. On passage, objections of the president to the contrary, notwithstanding. National Defense Authorization Act, that was in December 28th, 2020. On motion to suspend the rules and concur in the Senate amendment, making appropriations for the Department of the Interior, Environment, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2019, and for other purposes. On passage, United States, Mexico, Canada Agreement Implementation Act. If you notice, there's a correction here. Hold on. Correction, November 15th, 2019. Sorry, they messed that one up. If you notice, when it comes to the bills that they disagreed on, none of these are progressive issues. Do you see what I'm saying? So of course she's going to disagree with her on certain bills that actually don't hold as much weight to her progressive cred. You see what I mean? This doesn't affect her really. But when you look at it, 88% of the time, Nancy Pelosi and AOC have voted in the same way. And I want you to look at these two pictures because I predict this is exactly what we are getting with AOC. You are looking at a young Nancy Pelosi in the making. Let's all remember Nancy Pelosi was once progressive too when she came to Congress. That changed. She also supported universal health care long time ago. That changed. So this is the problem. When you look at the way that they vote, AOC is really not that progressive. This is what I've been trying to show people. This is what you need to pay attention to. Think about it. AOC out there voting for NATO, voting to give billions of dollars to Ukraine. She voted to increase funding to the Capitol Police. We said defund the police. We didn't say give them more money. You see how this works? She wouldn't force the vote. Of course not. She voted for Nancy Pelosi to become speaker. You see where this is going? If AOC wants to become president, she knows she's probably going to have to be on Nancy Pelosi's good side. I think she figured that out after her first year in Congress, and somebody must have spoken to her and told her that she was pushing a little too hard, and she started to pull back. And she fell in line. And she went from protesting outside Nancy Pelosi's office to calling her mama bear. This is where we're at now. So get ready for it. Get ready. You can tell people you saw it on here because I just showed you. Most of the time, they vote the same. So she's really not pushing back against corporate Democrats in her party. There you go. I'm going to get to some of these super chats here. Thank you for the super chat, Cameron X. But AOC punched back by getting her nails done. Oh, boy. Whew. Thank you for the super chat, Cameron. A kid says, Sabby, if AOC ran with a strong populist campaign explaining how populist policies will be good for everyday Americans, she would have a good chance. I don't think she would. Not in 2024. I don't think she would. And also, I don't think, even if she were to go that route, if she went that way with those populist policies, I don't think the DNC would let her win. They would do the same thing to her that they did to Bernie Sanders. They would find a way to cheat her out of it. Jay Tolbert says Matthew Ho won his lawsuit. Oh, and the Green Party will be back on the NC ballot. Breaking news. Thank you for letting me know that, Jay Tolbert. I think Matt sent me a message. I didn't have a chance to read it yet, but I'll check it out. Oh, Eric, I think there may be comments on Rockfin too. Greg Bruce says AOC doesn't support open borders. No, she doesn't. That's kind of true. They exaggerate. Thank you for the super chat, Oz. The Dems and Repubs are two heads of the same snake. Exactly. Exactly. MJ Anti-Imperialist Party. What did Trump have to do with Floyd? LOL. That's a good question. Some people felt, though, that because it happened under his presidency, that the idea to fix the situation was to get rid of Trump and to bring in Biden. That's why a lot of people went home during those protests after Trump lost. That's sad. Rodrigo, Sabby, did you see Brianna's radar on AOC, the new left standard bearer? It was garbage. No, I don't watch Rising anymore. I did not watch Rising. It's milquetoast for me. I was only watching it to see like Kim's segments, to be honest with you, because I stopped watching it after Crystal and Sagar. Actually, no, I stopped watching it before Crystal and Sagar left. And then I started back watching it a little bit again. And then they left. And then I gave it a chance. And I was like, this is boring. I stopped watching it. Then they added Kim. And I was like, oh, this should be interesting. And I started watching it again when Kim was added on there. But then when Kim left, I was just like, nah, but I can't. I said, I can't. I'm sorry. It just feels like corporate media. It's stale. It's not the same. Thank you for the super chat, Female Rage. AOC is evidence that we need to support third parties. they'll sell out their progressive values in a heartbeat to become part of the Democrat machine. That's what I'm telling you. Look, one or two things is going to happen. Either she's going to water down her message, okay? Or she's not going to water down her message, and the DNC is going to find a way to get her to lose anyway. They'll cheat. They'll do the same thing they did to Bernie Sanders. One of those two things I think is going to happen. But how did you guys feel? Let's take a look at that poll. Actually, I'll go to the comments on Rockfin, Eric, if you can get the poll results. I'll go ahead and read this. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Oh, Eric, you were doing this and you ain't invite your boy to the party. I'm hurt. I thought we were cool, man. What? Just because I prefer Sabby to read my Rockfins and not you. Come on, bruh. Thought we were cool, man. But peep this. Ever since de Blasio at the end of his term got rid of qualified immunity, NYPD has been losing officers and detectives like crazy. So they might not be as many as there were in the past. Here are some more suggestions. A federal law mandating that all states must provide to their voters the ability to pass and repeal state laws and amend their state constitution via ballot initiatives and VRs, and provide a competitive public financing of ballot measure systems for grassroots can compete with BIs and VRs that they're being financed by big money. Also, national infrastructure, aka U.S. public bank, and reinstatement of postal banks use the NIB to completely nationalize, stationalize, and municipalize all infrastructure, broadband, power, transportation, and water, giving universal access to all. Provide a pathway for government to assist co-op startups, not just worker, but other types. Also, a right of first refusal law to start converting corporations to co-op. Under implementation of a nationalized healthcare, can we include nationalization of pharmaceuticals, hospitals, and medical facilities? Mandate the government pick up 90% of pre-K through 12th grade. Public ed giving adequate funding to at-risk school districts while mandating state governments picking up remaining 10%, giving adequate funding to more at risk as well. Under criminal justice, nationalized, stationalized, and municipalized, prisons banning contracts with business of any kind. Reparations must be lineage-based and come all the way up to the 1960s to include Jim Crow laws. Yes, the report came out last Thursday, Sabby, every July. Yep, personality, alphabet letter next to the name and familiarity. Also, Sabby, when you say we are a minority in the country and we are really a conservative country, this is what I call looking at the glass half empty or full, looking at the three-dimensional square where the front of it keeps changing. Here's the thing. We who are in this space may be the minority, but do not get it twisted. Our policies are more popular than we are. Ha ha. Remember, these people of which you speak of place personality over policy. It is not until every state in the country allows voters to pass and repeal laws and amend their state constitutions via ballot initiatives and VRs we will get a better read on where people are on policy. When you have an alternate path to get what you want by circumventing the process of putting human rights in office, man, you're like F these politicians. We'll get this done ourselves while you guys still chasing your tail. Cool. Okay, Eric, I saw that. I'll go ahead and go to the next story then. All right, guys. Eric's gonna get that poll results ready, but while he does that, let's go ahead into the next story. Now, I do want to go ahead and explain something to you first before I show you this video clip. So Abby Martin was recently at Rimpac, and she was on Breakthrough News, and she had an interview with RANIA KHALEK, and they were talking about some of the issues that she saw with the military-industrial complex and how it is affecting the climate issue. But before I get into that, I want to explain to you what Rimpac actually is, because I don't want you to be like, what is she talking about? What is a Rimpac or whatever? So let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, so what exactly, try to make this bigger, is Rimpac? Rimpac, the Rim of Pacific exercise, is the world's largest international maritime warfare exercise. Rimpac is held during June and July of even-numbered years from Honolulu, Hawaii, with the exception of 2020, where it was held in August. It is hosted and administered by the United States Navy Indo-Pacific Command, headquartered at Pearl Harbor, in conjunction with the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, and Hawaii National Guard forces under the control of the governor of Hawaii. The U.S. invites military forces from the Pacific Rim and beyond to participate. With Rimpac, the United States Indo-Pacific Command seeks to enhance interoperability, among Pacific Rim armed forces as a means of promoting stability in the region to the benefit of all participating nations. It is described by the U.S. Navy as a unique training opportunity that helps participants foster and sustain cooperative relationships that are critical to ensuring the safety of sea lanes and security on the world's oceans. Now, everything I just read to you, if you're not really reading too much into that, it may not sound that bad, but it is indeed problematic when it comes to the environment. So Abby Martin is actually going to discuss that here. Again, she was on Breakthrough News. She was talking to RANIA KHALEK. I want you to hear what Abby Martin has to say.
Place and Amazon saying, no, we're not going to.
About all of this. I don't think that's my timestamp. It is not. Right about there. Okay. All right. So here we go. Take a listen to this. I want you to hear what she has to say about this. This is actually the segment that's going to take us into the call-in episode tonight.
Pentagon and the military war machine here in the United States is just destroying the earth. So we are very, very honored to be joined by Abby Martin, journalist and host of the Empire Files. Abby, thank you so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Anytime. And I know many of our fans follow the Empire Files, so some people probably know you were recently at Rimpac. I know it's a big military, exercise or whatever they call those things these days. But maybe you can certainly tell me more about what Rimpac is and what took you there to observe this bacchanal there from the U.S. military.
Well, it's all part of our reporting on Earth's Greatest Enemy. This is a film about the environmental impact of the U.S. military. I think a lot of us agree that environmental collapse and climate change are the biggest threats facing not only our species, but a lot of life on Earth. A lot of scientists on the issue of climate change are very conservative in their estimates because they don't want to be seen as political. So even the most conservative estimates are pretty dire here. But there's a huge gap in the discussion of the environmental movement that links the U.S. military as the world's largest institutional polluter, the world's largest consumer of fossil fuels. And it's such a huge, broad topic that encompasses so many facets. I mean, Superfund sites of toxic dumping, burn pits, chemical runoff, just the environmental destruction of warfare, and obviously bases, the existence of nearly 1,000 bases around the world. So it's a lot. And Rimpac fits into this because it's the largest war games in the world.
So I hope you heard that. I'm going to play a little bit more, but this is the largest one. And I continue to tell people that the military industrial complex is the largest single most polluter in the world. There is no war here. This is an exercise that they do. So the United States doesn't necessarily have to be at war with another country. They are still pretending to do so, even if they're not, when they have exercises like Rimpac. And this is still polluting the environment. She's going to go into more detail about things that it does with, animals in the ocean and so forth. But for people who say that they're serious about some type of climate reform, if they're not serious about the military and industrial complex pollution, they're not really serious about climate reform. This is more powerful than anything else that we do. So even for someone like me, I recycle, but that's not enough to undo the damage that's being done by these types of exercises that are done at Rimpac or just war abroad in general. It's not enough. This is why I tell people, when you look at these things in reference to carbon footprint, yes, an electric vehicle is better than driving a non-electric vehicle, but it is still small in reference to the damage that is done by the military industrial complex. Just something I want you to understand. So we can make these little changes in our lives, but it's still not enough to undo what the MIC is doing to the environment. That's the biggest problem. So let's go back in here.
Overseen by the United States military that conducts these exercises with 25 other countries. And every 2 years, they're conducted off the coast of Hawaii, already a very militarized place, heavily occupied by the US military, environmentally, destroyed pretty much, hundreds of toxic sites, several Superfund sites. So it already is kind of putting salt in the wound to even host these off the coast of what Hawaiians consider as like a legally occupied land in itself. But basically, US naval officials claim that these massive war games that are all about, enforcing an international rules-based order, which I find really fascinating considering the allies that are involved in this, including Israel, which is like, why on earth is Israel participating in these war games? Basically, it's just power projection, right? It's just basically.
Oh, that's a good question, though, that she just was asking there. Why is Israel involved in these war games?
Asserting that the United States, as well as all of these other kind of colonial powers, own this huge region of the world. And this year was the largest year. It kind of scaled back during COVID, and it had 25,000 military personnel from all over the world, and just dozens and dozens of these assault ships, submarines, helicopters, and they use live ammunition, missiles, bombs, and I can go on and on about how destructive these are to the environment, but that is why we went to cover them, because there's so little coverage that is critical about what they are doing over there.
So Abby is making a film. That's why she was there covering this information. I'm actually surprised they let her document it, to be honest with you. But she just wants to make more people aware about the type of damage that is happening. Someone mentioned Hawaii wants their land back. Yeah, that's another problem, right? I mean, the U.S. took that land, just like the U.S. is taking land from other people. So that's a whole nother topic that we can get into as well. But yes, you were right on. I think it was Heidi that said that. You were right on. So let's go back in here.
Yeah, I mean, Abby, I was listening to, you did an episode about this, and I was listening to part of it, and it was interesting, just the access you got, and also the way you were treated, which I know is going to be, featured in your film. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. I know you also got to ask a question to the Secretary of the Navy, so I'm excited to see what that looked like. You've been asking lots of cool questions to very important people recently, and doing quite a good job at that. But I wanted to ask about the sort of geopolitical context here, because, as it was framed, this is not directed at any country, but Empire Files released this footage you guys got of these sort of I don't know if it was a mock operation in a mock village taking place, but in that there seemed to be soldiers going into a house that had pictures of Kim Jong-un. So clearly this was, directed at North Korea. But on top of that, this is also as a part of a very anti-China coalition. I mean, the fact that it was taking place in the Pacific, I think is very symbolic. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about the geopolitical context here? Was China discussed? Was the sort of like anti-China alliance and this escalation of Cold War against China present in the war games as far as you saw?
Yeah, first I want to address your first point because it's really interesting in terms of geopolitical forces because, I was the only critical journalist there. There was very little people there covering the largest war games in the world, and the only other U.S. reporters there were kind of stenographers for the military-industrial complex. The reporters.
See, and this is one of those times where I wonder if maybe there weren't many U.S. journalists there is because they may not even know about it. Before I told you guys about Rimpac tonight, how many of you knew about it? So I wonder if that's part of the reason. Who knows? I don't know. Or maybe they are ignoring this issue. That's a possibility as well. Maybe they're afraid if they were to go down there that they would be censored or it wouldn't even be covered. They would write an article, they would get video footage, and then they would get back to their editor and it wouldn't even be covered. Who knows?
For defense, one covering how cool the systems and tech was of these ships and operations, and then the other half of the contingent of press were Taiwanese media, and so they were very, very insistent on currying favor with Taiwan, letting in Taiwanese media. Taiwan has been invited for the first time in the NDAA. Actually, Congress extended the invitation for Taiwan to participate in Rimpac.
Did you guys hear that? This is very important. Let's go back just a little bit here where she talks about whether or not there was some type of favoritism in reference to the Taiwan and China situation.
Abby, I was listening to, you did an episode about this.
There we go.
Operations. And then the other half of the contingent of press were Taiwanese media. And so they were very, very insistent on currying favor with Taiwan.
Did you hear that? You guys see what's happening? They were in favor of Taiwan. Where did Nancy Pelosi just go? She just went to Taiwan. You see what's happening?
Letting in Taiwanese media. Taiwan has been invited for the first time in the NDAA. Actually, Congress extended the invitation for Taiwan to participate in Rimpac. China, amazing.
Congress extended the invitation for Taiwan to participate in Rimpac. They extended the invitation. So let's put two things together here, guys. Nancy Pelosi goes to Taiwan, obviously upsets people in China. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're sending a message. I told you guys that was sending a message. She didn't do anything that Joe Biden didn't want her to do. That's why Joe Biden didn't comment on it. So that happened. Now we're talking about Rimpac, and Abby Martin is just letting you know that Congress extended an invitation to Taiwan to come and to be there. So what is that? You see, guys, see what's going on? That's two things now. That's two. That's another message that they're sending to China.
Did participate in 2014 and 2016 only because the United States wanted them to stop militarizing the South China Sea. And then they basically realized it was better to just kind of block them off and just to position, this kind of imperialist bloc against China. So as we saw the Asia pivot reinforced, of course, especially exacerbated during the Trump administration, that's when we saw China become the main focal point here for these war games. Of course, officials will say over and over again.
And why would they do that? Why would China be the main focal point for those war games unless they felt it would be necessary in the future? Not trying to speculate. I'm just calling it like I see it. Let's go back in.
No, this isn't about any one country, but admirals will, go off the record or go off the cuff rather at many press conferences and basically admit that all of this is simulating and posturing toward China's aggressive maneuvers that they're going to take Taiwan in the next 10 years. So all of this is basically mock drills and operations to prevent that happening. And as you mentioned, very importantly, so North Korea is also involved in this as well.
There it is. Remember, these are exercises that they do. It's like practice. They're not practicing for no reason. People thought that we were exaggerating when we said, like, over on RBN, like, what is Nancy Pelosi trying to get us into? We were saying, like, oh my God, please do not get us into any type of conflict here with China. Does it sound like we were exaggerating now? They've been practicing for this, guys. They're practicing. Nick says, this is just a warm-up, folks. Exactly.
Was mock invasions of residential neighborhoods with pictures of DPRK leaders on the walls. And again, this is 25 countries that are training to invade residential neighborhoods in North Korea. And I would just beg people to really think about that mental exercise. If North Korea, North Korea does prepare against a US invasion of its country for obvious reasons. But imagine if North Korea was working with all of Asia to do like mock invasions of residential neighborhoods in DC with pictures of the founding fathers on the walls. It's just beyond the pale. I mean, it's beyond comprehension because it just simply wouldn't happen. So the fact that this is all posturing against China, I think really says a lot. And, just this international rules-based order and to deter against military expansionism, it's just such projection. Who is the expansionist force in the Pacific? Who is enforcing an international rules-based order and who is violating flagrantly all of the rules and norms around the world? It's the United States and its allies.
That's right. It's us. We're the ones causing problems with everyone. It's usually us. But we want to put this focus on a country like China right now. And I'm not here to say that China is perfect, but hello, the United States has intervened in so many other countries. They have ruined people's lives in those countries with regime changes, with starvation, with sanctions. That's something that the US government has done to multiple countries. I went through the list one night on this show. How many times the US government has intervened in other countries? It was a long list. This is going back decades. So here's the thing. Here's the question that I have. If Abby Martin was not there at Rimpac, will we have this story right now? She just told you there weren't many other U.S. journalists there. Let's go on.
Lies.
No, it's a good point. It's almost like you're through the looking glass, quite frankly, when you're thinking about, that's really unbelievable. When you guys released the video, I just thought, it's like in a way you're like, oh man, I guess I'm not surprised that they're training against North Korea, but you got to be kidding me right now. Especially when they always say, well, we don't want to have any sort of war with North Korea. They're just a bunch of crazy people with nuclear weapons. And it's like, oh, okay. But, you mentioned this a little bit in when you were setting the scene for us, Abby, that I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about, which is, the impact of these war games, the environmental impact. I know a lot of people, I first learned about this from Empire Files, have heard about Red Hill recently and the impact the military had there in terms of, the environmental situation. But, what is this, having these happen year after year after year, really what is the impact on the Hawaiian people and the Hawaiian Islands?
Here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, Eugene. And it's something that's so unquantifiable because no one can speak for the creatures in the ocean that are gravely impacted by these war games. On top of the obvious impacts of just leaching chemicals, pollution from these ships, emissions from all of these assault vehicles and subs and helicopters, all of that, there's exemptions for the military, as we know, not only with climate and environmental protections, but also exemptions to go into protected waters. that are protected from other commercial boats from traveling into. So this encompasses all across the Pacific Ocean that the military can just go and conduct these operations in these waters. They're protected for a reason, right? Interestingly enough, through my research, I found that so this is the 28th year that RIMPAC has been happening. Up until 2013, the US Navy was basically not only exempt from the Mammal Protection Act, whales, dolphins, sea otters, things like that. But they were also saying that during these exercises, they could take, which really means harm or kill, 25,000 protected marine mammals for these exercises. And I'm pretty sure that they meant every single time that they were conducted. Now think about how insane that is. I mean, 25,000.
They're just killing animals like it's not. See, this is a problem. This is a problem. My husband was mentioning something to me recently about endangered species. Like when we were growing up, we used to hear about that more. And he mentioned to me, like, notice you don't hear much about that anymore. What happened to we need to protect endangered species? We don't even hear much. He's right. I don't hear much about it now. No one cares. I think she dropped out. What happened?
Marine mammals in the ocean, 25,000.
Okay.
When you're talking about harming or killing them, if you harm them by practicing this high intensity sonar blasts, that is killing them. I mean, when you are preventing these animals from being able to communicate, from migrating, from mating, that is essentially killing them and preventing them from being able to live. So it is astounding. That number is absolutely shocking. They've been exempt ever since. There was a couple lawsuits against them that they said that they were using low intensity sonar blasts. We still cannot quantify how much of an impact that is happening and how impactful that is to miles and miles. I mean, the Navy basically claims that they have like a scout on top where they're like, oh, nope, whale ahoy, like don't fire this giant missile and like sink the ship, which they do also. They sink these giant ships every time that they conduct RIMPAC, which crush coral reefs and do all these things. But it's like, dude, that does not, like, you're not accounting for hundreds of miles of these mammals migrating underwater. And again, like, you can't calculate the effects of these, because if something, if a whale's beached 100 miles away, the Navy could just be like, well, plausible deniability. We have no idea if that was a result of these sonar blasts or not. And again, the crushing of coral reefs, all fish underwater live basically by sound. And so the sonar blasting, again, like, it just has an incredible impact that we will not know, because no one is doing correct environmental assessments of this, certainly not the Navy.
Let's talk about that for a second in reference to the animals in the ocean. I don't know about you guys, but I love seafood. It is what it is. I was born in Maryland, okay? My parents are from Maryland. Listen, I grew up on seafood. Something I do want to let you know, if you're like me and you do like seafood, I don't know how much longer that's going to be a thing where we can eat seafood. Because when you have all these chemicals going into the ocean and it affects the animals in the ocean, like fish and whatever seafood items you like to eat that are in the ocean, what does that do to your food? And this is something you got to think about. Now, I'm not saying like you have to have seafood as a necessity. No, not necessarily. But that affects not just the water, it affects the animals. They are literally destroying the planet. And I feel like not enough people are upset about it. Not as many as should be. And this is one of the issues when we talk about climate. This is one of those issues that they keep us divided over, left versus right. And we really shouldn't, this should not be a left-right issue when it comes to climate, because all of us will be affected. But the political arena has turned it into such. So essentially, if you're on the right, you don't believe that climate change is even like a thing. Maybe not everyone, but that's the message. If you're on the left, you do believe that climate change is real. So the problem is is that we are already seeing the effects. At least I know I have, you guys probably have too. Record temperatures during the summer. We're starting to see those effects in places like Canada having triple digits during the summer. That happened last year. That's not supposed to happen. The sea level is rising. I can tell. I notice the difference. I love the beach. I go to the beach every summer. I can see the difference. I can tell. So you have cities like mine, like Baltimore, the Boston is already preparing. Should we put a wall around the Seaport District to prepare for the sea level because it continues to rise? These are real issues that are going to affect all of us, especially if you live on the coast. If you're on the East Coast, West Coast, South Coast, North, if you are by a water, you will be affected. And it's not just about the water, it's about droughts. All of these different things that we have to deal with in reference to the climate, because the military industrial complex is literally destroying the planet. And I want to tell you why rich people don't care. This part is really important. Those people have enough money to get the hell out of here when something happens. You don't believe me? There are bunkers that rich people have. I'm talking millionaires, billionaires, bunkers that they have underground so that when we have the next pandemic, they have a place where they can run and hide. We'll have to stand up here and fight alone. This is why we need to pay attention to the class issue. They have the money and the resources that when times get tough and the water starts to come in, they have the money and the resources where they can leave and they can go somewhere else. And most of us will not have it. This is why you have to pay attention to the class issue. Now, here's the thing. If they keep us fighting over left versus right, while these things are happening around us, nothing will change. We may get a little bit of change here and there, but it's not going to change significantly enough. And before you know it, the catastrophe's here and there's nothing we can do to even go back and try to fix it. Now, we can't completely reverse the climate effects. We can't completely reverse it. It's too far gone now. But we can try to implement some type of change. And so as long as the military industrial complex is doing what they are doing, we are still going to have a climate issue and a climate crisis that is coming more so in the future. That is not going to change. Now, I'm not going to play the entire video, but this is on Breakthrough News. I highly recommend that you check out the rest of that interview. I'm looking at the time because I know I got to do the call-in segment. Yikes! In a couple of minutes, and I actually postponed it to 10:05. I might need to change that to 10:15. Yikes. Anywho, yeah, we have to wake up, people. We have to wake up. This should not be a left-right issue. And it's frustrating to me to listen to people argue over this left and this right politician when neither one of them is going to help us in the future. When climate is concerned, you need more than one person. You have to get everybody on board, and you really have to start with the military industrial complex. So if none of these candidates are going there, which is what Abby is just telling you, if they're not going to reach that moment, then they are not getting my vote, period. Whether they are third party or independent, you have to fix the climate issue and you have to go after the military industrial complex first. That is how you do that. Everyone else is just playing games at this point. Really. Because all this other stuff, recycling, electric vehicles, that's cute, but that's not enough. And some people aren't going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you that it is not enough. If you have kids, if you have grandkids, you may not be alive when it happens, but your kids and your grandkids will. And you should care. Eric, I'm going to go take that break really quick. Will you do the results for the AOC poll, and then we'll come back and I'll go into the call-in segment? I think you're muted, though.
That's better. At least let's see. Check this thing. Yeah, I think I'm coming through. All right. I'm ready to see the poll results. Let's see what we've got. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so the question is, would AOC beat Trump if they ran against each other in 2024? And we've got yes at 15% and no at 85%. I think we would call that a resounding no for AOC versus Trump. Yeah, it's kind of imagining them on stage with Trump and AOC. It feels like she would kind of melt or call for protection or something. So Sabby will be back very soon to do the call in, and let's see. Oh yeah, let me show. Let's get that here. Let's put that here. Let's show the call in. So let me put the link in. All right, there's I just posted the call in link to the chat. That will be, if you go to that, it'll look like, let's see here. Ooh, that didn't really come up. Let's see, is that the right link? I'll have to see. All right, I'm going to find it here and make sure we got the right link. All right, so here is the upcoming room on call-in. Here's our link. Let me get that into the chat. I gotta do this. Sorry, sometimes we have to play around with this with this bit of technical stuff just to get it right. All right. There's our call-in room in the chat. Let's see. I think we got a couple of comments up here. We had, Desert Mantis, Eric not being transparent about the poll. He's calling voter fraud, and I deny that. And if anyone needs to do a public audit about the Sabby poll, we're open to that, and we can make that happen. We're all about transparency here and being open. I like this from Eric Gray. I guess the American empire is going out with a bang. Yep, we're certainly working on that one. We'll see if Mr. Eric Gray has a little more to say about that on the call-in. He's usually a regular there. Oh, Jared, we need a recount. We'll have to see if that's put in there in the software. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the segment tonight and on the demands. One of the things that I'm definitely all about with it is trying to make it about collaboration, and it was fun because there was some things that I actually heard from Sabby tonight. Kind of one concept of Election Day being a holiday, and the idea of part of the election reform is to make sure that the candidates also have access to the debates. I thought that was a good one. I think we need to have free public college in there somewhere. I think that would be another one to add in. And another big one, when Roger Meadows came on, giving me a hard time, Roger, saying he mentioned Big Pharma as another part of what we would want in a really good, comprehensive national healthcare system. So I think that one needs to get in there as well. You guys in the chat starting to fight with each other. Let's be nice to each other on the way out. So let's see. So for our call-in room, wait, where'd it go? Our subject is about the climate alert, And so we're going to want to hear from you what you want to say about the climate crisis, what's happening with it, what we should do about it, and we'll hear what you have to say. We're losing Angela. Not going to make it to call-in tonight. All right. Well, happy Friday, Angela, and have a good night. Let's see. Oh, let me pull that down. Oh boy. And so what else do we want to talk about? Let's see. So I went into the demands and kind of bring up some of that stuff. Oh, nope, she's here. I can stop trying to make stuff up to talk about.
Yeah, I got to start the call in because I'm already behind as usual. All right, tonight's call in segment, and I need to, Eric, you have the link for that. If you can put it in the, actually, I can do that too.
You got it. It's in.
Okay, I'm going to pin it so people have it.
The one you did before didn't work, but this one does. I can put it in the private chat.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'm gonna do this. Go to YouTube. Doo. But this is an important discussion, you guys. I think that we need to have this conversation. I, at some point, would like to do a climate summit. There's a couple of people I was told to reach out to that have done a lot of research on this. So, let's see here.
All right. I think you're good. Then carry on.
All right. Let me go to that video. And put that link in. Okay, I'm putting the link in here, paste. That's the call-in link, and I'm gonna replace the other pinned message with that. Okay, so the call-in link is pinned to the chat now. Why are there two pins? I'm confused. Let me remove the poll. In poll. There we go. All right, there it is. Okay, so tonight's call-in discussion is doo. All right, Abby Martin climate alert. Abby Martin discussed climate awareness on Breakthrough News. She mentioned the military-industrial complex involvement with the current climate crisis. Can we make it better? Thoughts. So that is the discussion for tonight. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Again, like I said, we really gotta drive this home. Like, we need to put more emphasis on this. Regardless of who's in office, something has to be done. So let's go ahead and head on over to call in. So have a good night. Keep up the fight.